All right. Hello, everyone. I see people are joining. Excuse the background, but I'm in a hotel. But I didn't want to not do the AMA just because I happened to be traveling. I got lucky and I got the opportunity to go to the Super Bowl yesterday, which was great. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you, as today is indeed the 14th. For those of you that haven't participated before, I do monthly AMA sessions as my way of frankly trying to share, trying to give back, share, provide perspective and advice to folks based upon the experience and things that I've done in my overall career. So I hope that you find value in this. Feel free to let other people know. And if you actually register on my YouTube channel, then you'll get notifications of when I'm doing them. But I do host them once a month. And the way this works is some people have submitted questions in advance, which I will go through, but I also monitor the chat. So please feel free to drop in any questions or comments in the chat as they come up. So let me get myself oriented here. Hold up, hang on a minute. It's the challenge of a hotel room and not where you're used to working. Let me actually pull up the questions I've got. And today's theme, by the way, was around mentoring. That doesn't mean that all questions have to be on mentoring. I usually pick a theme really just to prompt people for areas that they might be interested in learning more about. So feel free to ask me any topic that comes to mind or that you would be interested in hearing about. All right. Here we go. Okay, so first question. What advice, recommendations do you have for someone preparing for their first board seat? So as you can see, this has nothing to do with mentoring. Although it can be related, because if you're preparing for your first board seat, then I'm not sure if that means you already have it and you're getting ready to start. If so, then I would seek out people who have actually served on boards before and get their advice, hence the mentoring idea. And those of you that have heard me before know I have terrible allergies, and therefore I get this cough periodically, which I apologize for. All right. So as you're preparing to start your first board seat, seek out people who currently serve on boards. Ask for their advice. What makes for a good board member? Also, there is lots of information on the web. You can do a search. I would encourage you to join NACD, the National Association of Corporate Directors. They have lots of information about how to be a good board member on topics to get you comfortable with different aspects of governance. Because a lot of it is actually building your own confidence level. And I find that the more that I do research and homework, as I like to call it, the better I feel and the better I'm able to build that confidence to be able to show up. So take some courses for NCD, lots of reading there too. Talk to people who've been board members before, ask for their advice. But my top pieces of advice are when you first join a board, listen. Listen, listen, listen. Don't feel compelled to opine on everything that's being discussed. Stick to your area of expertise and knowledge. One of the things I like to say is boards want to know what you know, not what you think. And little tongue-in-cheek, but what I mean by that is they want to know where you truly have areas of expertise versus just opinions about things. There are other people on the board who can offer expertise on areas that you have opinions. So unless your opinion is being asked for, stick to areas in which you know. All right, hold on. It's always amazing to me how cough is fine, and then as soon as you start an event or speech like this, the tickle comes. So anyway, I appreciate your patience. All right, next question. What is the greatest leadership advice you've ever received? The greatest. Probably the greatest leadership advice was to realize that your title doesn't make you a leader, your actions do. So you can be a leader at any point in your career. It has nothing to do with age, experience, or title. It's all about whether or not you create an environment in which people want to follow you. They believe in you, they believe in what you're doing, how you approach things, they feel comfortable, you feel trust, right? It's all about actions, not title. Next, how do you establish trust and authority when you're younger than your team? That's a great one. Trust me, for the first half of my career, I was always younger than my team. So, what I'll tell you is it's not age that brings authority. It really comes down to respect. When you develop respect, then you get that authority. Now, how do you develop respect when you're younger? Well, realize what your role is and what you need to do. As a matter of fact, I'm going to hold on a second because I'm going to combine this with another question I remember seeing, hang on a minute, which is, I'm looking, how do you build trust as a new manager, right? With a team, with a big team. This one says 200 direct reports. I can't believe it's 200 direct reports, but okay. When the reports are often older than you. So I have two questions here. So let me address the questions together. I've found that using a servant leader approach is really powerful. Now, what is a servant leader? A servant leader means that you see yourself and your job as helping those people who report to you as your primary focus. Your job is to help them be successful. And when you do that and they become successful, then by definition, you do too. So I always focused on my team. So trying to understand for the people who reported to me, all right, how can I help them with their objectives, right, with their aspirations? How can I help them be successful? And in doing that, you create an environment in which people believe that you have their best interest at heart. You also create an environment in which you are, in essence, helping them. They know that they can come to you to solve problems, to help them solve problems, right? To smooth the path, to get advice, to get support, etc. And if you can provide help, support, guidance, and kind of always be there for them, develop that trust, then you develop respect. And it has nothing to do with age. So, first part is really making sure that you understand what your team, each one, what your team is trying to do, and then figure out how can you help them. And also take the time to make sure that you are also sharing with them that their interests are key to you, right? That you actually care about that. They want to know that you care about them. All of those things can really help. The other thing that's really important here is to be there for them when they have challenges, when they have issues, right? And try to think ahead, given their responsibilities, given what they're trying to do, what are things that you can proactively do to make the environment either easier, smoother, to help, in essence, be one step ahead of where they are. One of the images I like to create is your job as a leader is you're trying to help your team run or move as fast and as quickly as possible. So you just want to be two steps ahead, to be pushing away the roadblocks, the boulders, the whatever, right? So by the time they get there, things are easier for them to move forward. So if you take a mindset, if your job is trying to make your team's job easier, they see that and they respect that. The other piece is it's important to be vulnerable. And by vulnerable, I don't mean weak, right? By vulnerable, it means that they know that you're a real person. A lot of times when you're younger than your team, that doesn't mean you know everything, or I should say not everything, that you know more than each member of your team does. You don't. By definition, you're not really supposed to. All right? So when you don't know something, or they know more than you do, or you're trying to clarify, admit it. It's okay. All right? You're bringing something to the table by fact of you're actually now the leader that they need, which is to maybe navigate the organization, right? To get things done, to pull in resources, whatever it might be. And also make sure that you're giving your team the credit, that you're building them up. All those things help people earn respect for you because they realize that you acknowledge and understand what they bring to the table. All right, next one. Hi, I heard you speak at Stryker. Okay. I was going to be the first female GM without sales experience that had hit me. I should just go for it. So I did. I became a sales rep, and then my boss fired me. So now I'm completely devastated. I had a stable job, my dream company, and just because of a crappy manager, I was let go. Any advice for when you're feeling so low and doubting yourself? What would be your career advice? I've been actually interviewing for the last 2 months, but I'm very sad. Okay, so first of all, one of the things that I learned early on, and thankfully, actually, to my late husband, let me share a story with you. I was in sales, and I had this big deal that I had just sold. We were going to be implementing point of sale devices into a national pharmaceutical chain around the world. It was going to be a multi-million dollar deal, take over a couple of years. I was blowing out my sales number, my manager. It was going to make his number, his manager. I mean, everybody. Lots of visibility. The executives are flying in to meet with the customer and make sure everything's good, right? Everything's great. I'm like this hero. And then the customer calls me in and tells me they've changed their mind. They're going to invest in a point of sale company instead of buying from my company. OMG. I now have to go back and tell everybody that we've lost the deal. So not only am I going to miss my number, but my boss and my boss's boss. I mean, this is horrible. I went from being this rock star to being this dud, right? So for a few days, I'm feeling really down, really down. So I understand how you feel in terms of losing a job. And then I come home and my late husband says to me, "So how was your day?" And I said, "Well, how do you think it was?" It was horrible, right? I mean, everybody, I don't know what I'm going to do. People are walking around like I'm in mourning. They're like, "Oh, Shellye, I heard what happened," blah, 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 blah. So I'm feeling bad. And he looks at me and he says, "Shellye, get over it." He said, "The mourning period is over." I'm like, "What?" It's been 3 days. You are the same person you were before you found out that news. So go out there and find something else to sell. Go get something else done. But this doesn't define you unless you let it define you. Wow, right? Huge. So what I would tell you is being fired from a job, that doesn't define you. People get fired all the time for a lot of different reasons. And some of them for cause, but a lot of times it's not. It's for different issues, right? And things that have happened. That firing does not define you. It does not wipe away everything that you have done and accomplished up to that point. All right? So what I would tell you is dust yourself off. Find your cheerleaders. Who are the people in your network that know what you're capable of, know your skills, who can build you up? Because I find that I need cheerleaders. My late husband, he was a big cheerleader for me. But I had others, friends, sisters, right? People that I could call on. Find those cheerleaders because trust me, when you're feeling sad and you feel like a failure, it's hard to break yourself out of it. And if you feel like a failure, trust me, you're not interviewing very well. Almost by definition, right? When you're ready to go in for an interview, you need to be upbeat, you need to be positive, you need to be confident because all that comes across. So spend time with people. Let them know, hey, listen, I need help. I need support. I need you to remind me, right, of what I'm capable of. And then when you're going in for interviews, right, know who you are and what you've done. And when they ask you what happened with the last job, right, what you say is, here are all the things I've done and accomplished. I got a new manager, and frankly, we didn't see eye to eye, right? I mean, you could say it just didn't work. That happens, all right? And given that you've got a track record before that, that's really stellar, people get that, all right? So don't be embarrassed. Don't be down or shy or apologetic, right, for all that. Remember what you've done, move forward, and be positive. And listen, for those interviews, practice. Practice that. Don't just go into an interview knowing what you're going to say and then say it for the first time. Use a friend, use a colleague, use a sister or neighbor, doesn't matter. But have them practice interviewing with you and asking you tough questions so that you can create answers that you're comfortable with and that you're used to saying, and then you can build confidence around. So that's my big advice, right? Is get yourself ready for game day. Listen, think about baseball players. A good baseball player strikes out 60 to 70% of the time, right? Strikes out. So do you think they sit there and worry about every time they strike out? No. No, they know when they step at bat, they're going to strike out more than they're actually going to hit. But they come up every time ready and knowing they're going to hit the ball. So you need to do the same thing. Okay. Next, here's some questions on mentoring. What are the mentors expecting to hear during a meeting? I'm afraid the meeting will be dull if I don't come with a high impact project or profound question. All right, so first of all, when you have a mentor, the purpose of the mentor is not for you to impress them. You're not walking in like trying to prove, here's who I am and here's what I'm doing. If you've got a mentor and somebody that's actually investing in you, right, then what you want to be able to do is to use them for advice and counsel, which means you have to be open. You're not trying to create a facade. What you're trying to do is to say, basically, here's who I am. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. And what advice do you have for me? Right? That's the net of what you're trying to do. So don't worry about coming up with the most profound question. This is not an interview. What you want to do is to be, however, clear on why you're having the meeting. So if you're meeting with a mentor, then there should be a reason for the meeting. And if you don't have a reason, then postpone it and spend time thinking through, what do I want from this person? Now, what could you want? Most of us in any role have areas where we have strengths, areas where we have weaknesses, areas we're trying to work on, areas we want to improve, right, etc. Well, with a mentor, you want to be vulnerable. You need to share all that so that they can actually help and support you. So the best thing to do is think through, what do you want to accomplish? Based on where you are, it might be you want to just excel in the job you've got. Okay, then the conversation with the mentor would be around, here's what my job responsibility is, here's how success is measured, here are the things I'm doing, right? Maybe it's, what other advice do you have for me? Are there experiences that you think might help me, right? Even be more successful in what I'm doing. So it can be nailing the job you've got. It can be positioning you for the next job. It can be trying to help you get an experience, right? That's an add-on. So spend time thinking about what you want out of it and then craft, right, your set of questions. But again, make sure if you're not vulnerable and forthright with your mentor about who you are, what you're good at, what you're not, etc., they're not going to be able to help you very well. All right. I see a message coming in from the chat. At what point does ambition become unrealistic? Do we listen to the naysayers? If I listened to the naysayers, I wouldn't have married the man I married. I wouldn't have taken the first job I took. I can't even go on with all the things that I would not have done if I had listened to people who were like, oh, no, that's not a good idea. I don't think so. Why do you think you could be successful at that? So when I say, naysayers, now here's the key, though. You have to listen to what they're saying and then decide if what they're saying is valid or not. Because there are times when people suggest that maybe not. And in thinking about it, that made sense. All right? But if they're saying no, but they really don't know what you're trying to do, know what you're capable of, right? Know what your objectives are, then I don't know how realistic that advice is. So when does ambition become unrealistic? Only when you look at the plan that's required to get there and it's not possible. And let me give you an example. If I decided that I wanted to be an astronaut at the age of 30, and I was already in tech, right, working in sales, which is what my first job was coming out of college, well, that would have been unrealistic. I didn't have the education for it, and even if I went to go get the education, by the time I got it done, I wouldn't be able to get there by 30. Now, if I decide I want to be an astronaut by my late 30s, right, then maybe that was possible. I could go back to school, right, I could get it done. So the time when an ambition becomes unrealistic is only when you do the research to figure out the plan. And when you lay the plan out, you can't figure out how to actually make it happen within your timeline, right? But in general, my views are if you really want something and you're ambitious about going after it, right, then do the research, figure out a plan of action, and start executing on it. I have a friend who wanted to be a clinical psychologist. She didn't even have her undergraduate degree, and she was in her 50s, early 50s at the time. Well, guess what? She went back to school, right? She got all the certifications she needed. She is now a clinical psychologist and loving it in her 60s. Okay, so I'm not one that believes that, oh, just because it's not the typical path, or just because you're not at the right age, or just because you can't do something. I believe if you have something that you want to get done, that you want to build, that you want to accomplish, then it's really just a matter of doing the research to figure out what does it take to get there. Lay out a plan, look at that timeline, and say, all right, am I willing to do the work and make the trade-offs to make this happen? And take the help, right, that you're going to need along the way. So I hope that was helpful. All right, next one. What are the key factors a woman should focus on in her 40s to grow in her career? Actually, I don't think it has anything to do with age. I think the factors in terms of what you should do to focus and grow your career are the same no matter what stage of career you're in. And the factors really are, one, being intellectually curious, which means you have to be willing to be a continual learner. Make sure that you are growing and building skills all the time, right, as you're moving forward. Two, be intentional. Set objectives, whether they're skills you want to gain, experiences you want to have, right, opportunities you want to go after. Be intentional about what you want to do. And with that intention, then, I'm going to come back to planning. I'm a big believer in planning. Hopefully, those of you out there have had a chance to read my book. If you haven't, I suggest doing it. Unapologetically Ambitious. Take risks, break barriers, and create success on your own terms. It really does try to lay out the steps that you need to take to be able to achieve your aspirations professionally and personally. Because it comes down to being intentional, creating a plan, executing on that plan, and then making the trade-offs necessary and taking lots of help and support. Along the way. And yes, adopting mentors, which is why we're talking about mentors here. I'm a big believer in mentors because no matter what job or career you're in, somebody else has done it before. So go find them and learn from them so that you don't make every single mistake along the way. You'll still make mistakes, but it would be nice if you can make fewer because you learn from others that are out there. So that's my advice. Now, what should you do when your manager's boss asks you to work on a project with him in front of your manager, and then your manager tells you separately not to reach out to his boss to work on that project? This is interesting, and I'm sure several people have come across this in the past. Here's what you do. Your boss's boss trumps, all right? And it's not your job to figure out this funky dynamic between your boss and his boss. So when your boss tells you that, right, obviously it's happened, so you didn't have a chance to respond right away. But you can go back now. So you go to your boss and say, I was thinking about what you advised me, which was not to approach your boss after he asked me, right, for help. I feel very awkward in this position, and I'd really appreciate it if you would talk to him about this project. Because right now, if he reaches out to me, I am going to respond. So if you don't want me to work on it, I really need you to talk to him. So you basically put it back on your boss. It is not your job to figure out what this funky dynamic is between the two. It's not your job to assuage your boss's, he might be feeling inadequate. He might be feeling threatened, by this. Who knows what it is? That's not your job to solve. So if his boss approaches you, then you respond to that. And tell your boss he needs to have a conversation with his boss. What advice would you give to someone who is new to mentoring? So if you're a new mentee, I have a number of things I want to share here. Because honestly, I find that a lot of people, frankly, aren't good mentees. So try to be a good mentee. And being a good mentee means that you take responsibility for the relationship. You are the one that's getting the most value out of this relationship. And therefore, you should be doing the most work for it. It's not your mentor's responsibility to actually schedule time to follow up with you, right? No, no, no. That's all your role. So you should define, back to the question I talked about earlier, what it is that you want to get out of this relationship, right? And what is that you're looking for. So when you're getting ready to have a conversation with your mentor, in advance, you should send an agenda, right? These are two issues I'd like to talk about. I'm struggling with this particular problem, and I'd like your advice on X. Now, why do you do that? Because it gives the mentor a chance to actually think about it before you come, which will probably make your experience even better versus just thinking about it off the cuff. It also lets your mentor know that you value their time because you're taking the time to actually set an agenda. Now, when you have the meeting, you talk through the agenda. If something else has come up, it's fine to bring something else up as well. Not a problem. All right? But then here's the key. After the meeting, you want to close the loop on the things that you talked about. So if you, I'll make it up, if you ask for advice about how to handle maybe an upcoming meeting, that after the meeting, drop your mentor a note and say, listen, I had the meeting with such and such that we talked about. I took your advice and focused on blah, 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 right? This worked. Maybe this didn't, who knows? But thank you very much. It really helped me with having a much more effective, right, conversation. Whatever it is, you want to close the loop on each of the topics when they happen. Now, why do you need to close the loop? Because that's where the mentor gets value. Right now, you're getting the value. You're getting their wisdom. You're getting their time, right? But to have a true relationship, both sides of the equation need to find value. And so the mentor gets value in, frankly, feeling good in knowing that the time they spent was worth it and made a difference. I can't tell you the number of times, personally, that people have come for advice, for counsel, da-da-da, and then I hear nothing. Nothing. So you don't know, was it a waste, right? Did they do anything with it or not? You feel like you wasted your time and you wasted your energy. Do you think I'm more likely to actually support them in the future? Probably not. All right. So the best way to be a good mentee is to make sure that you take ownership for the relationship, that you always close the loop, that you let them know how they're impacting you. And by the way, that could happen even later. 3 months down the road, something happens and you remember some advice you got from your mentor and you took it, drop them a note, let them know, right? It can be real quick. Hey, just want to let you know, I'm still implementing your advice on blah, 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 right? All that helps because it's that feeling, that intrinsic of, oh, I've helped somebody. It goes a long way. Maya Angelou says, you won't, and I'm going to probably butcher this a little bit, but people don't remember what you say and they don't remember what you do, but they do remember how you made them feel. And it's very true. So by making your mentor feel valued and feel helpful, then they'll remember you and they'll be more likely to help you going forward. Okay. What are effective ways to identify mentors? And by the way, this whole mentoring thing, I talk about all through the book. Here's the key. You're not looking for like one perfect mentor, right? There's very few perfect people out there. I haven't found any. So what you want to do is to find a bunch of people. So my view is just about anybody can be a mentor. Somebody who's done a similar job to what you've done, somebody who's at a similar level. If you're now a first-line manager, somebody who's managing other people, can be in a different industry, can be a different group. Why? Because the same concepts of how you manage people translate no matter what environment that you're in. A lot of people focus on mentors as people to help them figure out their next step. How do I get my next job, But personally, I found the most effective mentors are those that help me do the job I currently have. because you don't get that next opportunity until you nail your current job. So where are the mentors? They're everywhere. They can be people in your company, right, that now have different roles, different levels, et cetera. They can be people outside of your company. You might find mentors in neighbors. You might find mentors at people on your soccer team. I mean, you never know. It's people who you admire, right? Admire their approach or admire their style or who have experiences that you haven't yet had, right? All those types of people can be mentors. So don't limit yourself with trying to find the perfect one. Try to learn from as many people as you can. Okay. I answered the building trust. Okay, here's one. What wisdom would you give to a woman like myself? I'm turning 40 this year. I've got 4 children under 9. God bless you. And I'm only now starting to explore a new career path. It's so daunting to be older. I have life experience, but not professional experience. I skipped through a little bit. Bottom line is, you know, the advice of how do I get back into the work world. So here's my advice on this one, and this is not necessarily my area of expertise. But what I would advise is number one, start with realizing you actually have a lot of skills. Because if you think about yourself as I have no skills because I've not worked outside the home, then it's going to be very hard to sell yourself. And when you're interviewing, you are selling yourself. Trust me. So spend time actually building up your own confidence about your skill set. So what's your skill set? Well, I would say you're probably a pretty good project manager. If you've got 4 kids under 9, you've got a lot going on, you're managing, juggling, that's all project management. Um, you may have been involved, and I don't know, it doesn't say here, but in other activities. Who knows? You could have been involved in the PTA or maybe Girl Scouts with your kids or manage a soccer team. I don't know. But think about those things that you did that were also maybe in the volunteer side. Well, you know what? Those are skill sets too. Orchestrating, organizing, fundraising, right? Who knows? But literally assess the things that you've done and make a list of here are the skill sets that I've actually got. All right. Now, once you have your skill sets, then you want to focus on networking with people. Number one, try to find other women who have actually gone back to the workforce, who were mothers. I bet you, and I haven't looked, but I bet you if you go online and do a search around stay-at-home moms going back to work, I'm sure you'll find some groups, right? I'm sure you'll find other information, things that people have put out there. So go find them and use them to help learn. Again, mentors, to learn from them about how do they do it. The good news is now's a great time because everywhere you look, there's a talent shortage. Companies are looking for people. So you are now available. Now, it might mean, it's going to be harder. I'm not going to lie. It's definitely going to be harder. It might mean that you should try to look at maybe some volunteer, opportunities to build some very specific skill sets until you get something, right, in terms of that's paid. I would try to be more active and more visible. So get out there, whether it's social media, what have you, to make sure your skill sets are known. Let everybody know that you are looking for a job. When I say everybody, I mean everybody. Your neighbors, people at church, people at the gym, right? Anybody you come across, just make it your, oh, by the way, right? You're having conversations, you just say, oh, by the way, I'm looking to get back into the workforce, right? And I'm really good at project management, blah, 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 right? That's your, oh, by the way statement, because you never know when people might have opportunities. And people who know you, think of people who know you that are in the workforce. Because if they know you, they know kind of the raw skills, capability type of person you are, and they may be the most likely to be able to find opportunities to be able to pull you in. So network, network, network. Build your own confidence, right, about your skill sets and try to find others who have done what you're getting ready to do. Because trust me, there have been a lot of them. And that way you can learn from them as you're pushing forward. All right. Those are actually the questions I had in advance. I'm going to give it a moment and say, are there any other questions people have? If so, please enter them into the chat, and I would be happy to address them. Oh, here's one. I have an interest in product sales and will pivot to that later in my career. How do I develop my interest in product sales until I'm ready to make the switch? All right. Well, not knowing exactly what you're doing now, if the company that you're in actually has this group, right, or people who do this role, I would start building those relationships. Um, Let people know you can have informal conversations. Say, hey, one day I'm thinking about getting into product sales. If you have time, I'd love to meet you for coffee and talk about what you're doing, right? Et cetera. So build some relationships across. If this isn't the kind of role that's in your company, then back to networking. Make that. I'm a big believer in, oh, by the way, tag-ons, right? So make that your oh, by the way, tag-on with everybody you meet, who might be in professional companies that have product sales groups, right? Having a conversation, whatever it might be, say, hey, by the way, I'm interested in the future in getting into product sales. If you know anybody you think would be good to talk to, right, would love an introduction. Just make it an oh, by the way, because you never know who can be helpful to you. But that would be my big advice. Start building relationships with people that are in that arena and do some informal interviews, do some formal conversations to try to figure out, are there some skill sets and things that I can build now while I'm thinking about it as I work towards making that pivot. All right. Other questions? If not, let me give it a few more minutes. I hope people have a good day planned ahead, depending on where you are. On the West Coast, we're just getting started. On the East Coast, you're already halfway through your day. Here's one. I'm sure you don't send many cold emails anymore, but you must receive a lot. How do you convince someone to give you a chance? Cold emails are really tough, because a lot of the people you want to reach out to get a lot of them, and frankly can't meet with everybody who wants to meet with them or talk with them, etc. So the best thing is to try to figure out how not to send a cold email, but to use people that you know. You'd be amazed. People in your network, the network you have already. And a lot of people say, but I don't have a network. The answer is yes, you do. All of your colleagues, all of your neighbors, all the people you know in the gym or in whatever activities that you do outside of work, parents of your kids' friends. All right. I mean, there are a lot of people that you actually know if you sit down and think about it. So ask these people who they know, right? But be specific. And then you can get a warm introduction, right, into people. And then work your way to people that you want to ultimately get to. But cold emails, I don't recommend them. Everybody's really, really busy. So it's very rare that a cold email is actually effective. So try to make it a warm one. Work your network first, meet with people, and then try to leverage their network. When you meet with somebody that you do know, then you ask them, is there anybody that you know that you think would be good to talk to, right, or helpful? And then you just do that all the way through. Let me give you an example. When I took over as CEO of Zaplet, which ultimately became MetroStream, it was in terrible, terrible straits. And I needed to find, frankly, a new business model and area of focus for the business. Now, I have a lot of strengths, hiring teams, building companies, go to market, etc. But I'm not necessarily the one that comes up with the brand new entrepreneurial idea. So therefore, I need to find smart people who have these great ideas. So I started meeting with people. And what I would do is I didn't say, hey, here's my company. What do you think I should do with it? What I did was I was trying to find a problem to solve, a really hairy business problem to solve. So I started meeting with people and just asked them, what kind of business problems do you see out there that just aren't being solved very well? Right? Asked a very big open question. They give me their thoughts. And then I always followed up with, now, given that I'm trying to find big problems, right, blah, 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 that software can solve, who else do you think I should talk to? And what happened? I ultimately met with a man called Roger McNamee. Now, I didn't know Roger before I started this process. And I wasn't even like one step away from Roger. It was like several steps before somebody connected me with Roger after having all these conversations. And Roger was the one who actually gave me the first inkling of the idea around compliance and risk. And ultimately, we built a governance, risk, and compliance company. So if I had just reached out to Roger cold, would he have responded? Probably not. So use your network. Does it take time? Yes, but that's okay. use your network, set up calls, questions, and then ask people who else they would recommend. And that's how you turn cold calls right into warm calls. You're traveling every weekend from California to Texas. Yeah, I was. That's right. And at that point, you were just making ends meet, or were you still earning enough to save money? Oh, fair question. At that point, I was saving money. Frankly, um, we tried to live below our means for most of my career, and that's just because I personally believe in savings and having a safety net. So even when I was commuting, we were saving money. Um, a lot of people when they come out of school and they start working and they get their first car, right, new car, and they do this and do this, and we bought used cars. We bought used cars for a long time. I'm trying to think of when did we buy our first brand new car? First brand new car might have been actually when we got to Dallas. And at that point, I'd already been working for like 15 years. Okay, I mean, so just to set your perspective, we lived below our means so that we could indeed save. Okay, I think those are all the questions that have come through. Well, listen, everyone, thanks so much for joining today. Hopefully this has been helpful. Please register and sign up so you can hear about the next one. And hope to see you in March. Have a wonderful Valentine's Day. And if you haven't already, check out Unapologetically Ambitious. I think you might find things in there that can be really helpful. All right. Oh, wait. You didn't read or address my question, Shellye. I got a note from David. Well, David, it really wasn't a question. If the question is if I'm interested in investing in an oil company, the answer is no. I use this session to actually address questions around career advice, life advice, etc. But I am not actually looking for investments. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.